You are still watching Jannelle, your weekly dose of Philippine stories of immigration and representation, and here to represent the Philippine Senate, particularly the opposition in the Philippines, is the Honorable Risa Hontiveros, Senator of the Republic of the Philippines. We have been talking about issues in the Philippines. Earlier, you gave us broad strokes of what's happening for Filipinos like us. Ako, lumaki ako sa Philippines, and I moved here in my 20s. And so sometimes I still get, I really do consider Philippines still my home. And so we still care about what's going on there. We always hear it being said, you know, you can take the Filipinos out of the Philippines, but never the Philippines out of the Filipinos. So as Filipinos, we are concerned with what's going on. Let's start with the faction, because it's kind of like a popcorn moment, right? Where you just, you know, but it's not as entertaining if you think about that these people are supposedly responsible for the future of an entire nation.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So what's going on that front?
Well, it seems that the unit team was a marriage of convenience just for the election. Even the rebranding about Bagong Pilipinas seems to be just a facade, a projection of progress, but masking very real difficulties that while the two factions are having it out and some are just tempted to turn it into a popcorn moment, so many important things that should be governed properly are left unattended to. Filipinos are still, many are still poor and are still lacking jobs, complaining about corruption and the high prices of food and other commodities. The Philippines, we are still being bullied by China in the West Philippine Sea. I mentioned corruption earlier. That is still a problem on the economic front. So it's early in the administration, but so now the opposition sees that we have to keep presenting ourselves as a better alternative in terms of our understanding of the problems, but not just that, also the alternatives that we are offering moving forward.
I wanted to also touch a little bit on the economics. There seems to be a disconnect because for people on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, on not so much on Facebook, but on TikTok, you see these Filipinos doing so well with branded items, with houses, with cars, and so and then here you are, and we also hear about Filipinos still living in under poverty, in poverty levels. So where's the disconnect? What's going on?
The disconnect is indeed there has been some growth in the past few years. There is some recovery now after the pandemic, and there are still those age-old potentials locked in the Philippine economy. But the growth that we have seen, even in recent years, hasn't been more equitably shared, especially among those who need it the most. So much of the growth in the past few years has still been captured by those parts of Philippine society that traditionally, historically, are already privileged, already have their hands on the levers of the economy.
So the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer.
Still that
and the poor Filipinos who suffer, especially those in far-flung areas in the provinces we don't hear about, they are susceptible to crimes of human trafficking. Which leads me to the Quiboloy case. What is going on that front?
There are 3 warrants out for his arrest, 2 from the courts, 1 in Davao City and another in Pasig City, and that one for a non-bailable offense. And there's a 3rd warrant from the Senate. But the Philippine National Police is still looking for him and laboring to arrest him. They have actually sent 2 units of the Special Action Forces to Davao City to temporarily take over the duties of the National Police there. So we are just waiting, the courts are just waiting, and the Senate is just waiting for him to be physically brought before us. But also in the United States, he is already facing charges on 3 counts here in California, and for another, that one for money laundering in Hawaii. The 3 here in California include the very serious one for human trafficking. And since there is an extradition treaty between the Philippines and the United States, we're also still hoping that sometime there may be an extradition request from the U.S. government to the Philippine government.
What will it take for us, for him to be served, to be brought to court, at least, to answer for the allegations?
It will take the labors of the Philippine National Police exceeding the labors of those who seemingly are protecting and hiding him somewhere in Davao City, still in the Philippines. Once that arrest can be effected, he can be presented to the Philippine courts. He can be presented to the Senate to finally be a witness in the Committee on Women's hearings. And if and when an extradition process gets underway, he can also be made available here in the U.S. to face justice here as well.
And you also have your hands full on the Alice Guo investigation, Your Honor.
Naalala mo ba?
So tell us what's going on that front naman.
Okay. Well, just before I came here to the U.S., on this working trip, and that's why I missed the parades here, we had an executive session on the mysterious Mayor Alice Guo to investigate her links to the Pogo, or the Philippine Offshore Gaming Operations, the links of that Pogo in her town of Bamban to money laundering, human trafficking, cyber scamming, and also possibly the angle of espionage because of the possible conduct of surveillance and hacking operations from the Pogo hub in her town. When I go back, we will be doing a briefing by the Anti-Money Laundering Council about the illegal revenue flows from the Pogo operations in her town. We will also be doing a hearing of the recently raided Pogo hub in Porac town in Pampanga province. So they're not stopping, they just keep popping up.
Yes.
And then finally, we will do another public hearing, hopefully to close or lead to the closure of our 4-year already investigation against Pogos.
Right. Okay, we have one last segment on the show. We will take a break, but I wanted to pose this question now because Maria Ressa,
Yes.
when I interviewed her, she said every time she interviews people, she always asks that one question, which is, why do you do what you do? Because just listening to you now in the last how many minutes that we've been talking, it's not easy. It's not easy, it's difficult, it's frustrating, fighting against institutions, fighting against the system, being a woman, feeling like you're not really getting anywhere, even with investigations, even with the courage that you're showing. So why do you do what you do? We're going to be returning with that answer when we return. Don't go away. Senator Risa Hontiveros, thank you so much once again for joining us on SoJannelle.
Thank you for inviting me.
We are here and in Orange County to celebrate Kalayaan.
Yes.
And we've talked about that, you know, Kalayaan Kasarinlan. We've talked about, are we really a sovereign nation and what can we do to even enforce that even more? And if you missed any of those, make sure that you catch some of our previous editions and previous shows on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SoJannelleTV. But we are also available on demand on I Want TFC for those of you who are subscribers of TFC. Senator Risa, we posed that question earlier. Why do you do what you do? And you've been at it for years now. You started with a party list.
Yes, Akbayan Party.
Yes, and it just fighting. And I'm sure you get frustrated. What frustrates you?
Yeah. Well, what frustrates me is when we don't do what we could to make things better, or when we do things that make things even more difficult for ourselves. Even if we know in our hearts, we know in our minds that we should be doing otherwise. So common sense and a sense of, I guess, the common good.
Yes, a sense of integrity.
Yeah, that too.
Right? And you see people, because it's difficult, you're fighting against institutions, you're fighting against greed, you're fighting against power that always corrupts. What keeps you going? Is it easier to just, okay,
it might seem easier at the start. I can imagine that. But in the long run, and especially, for example, when we're at the end of our lives and looking back, you know, I've heard that saying, there's nothing sadder in life than vain regrets. So I don't want to regret. And I think more of regret comes not from the things that we did, because
think
for most of those we can apologize, we can make amends, but for the things that we didn't do. So if you ask me what drives me, maybe I'll relate it to the themes that you're leading us to think about freedom and sovereignty. I guess I try to do what I do with my community, never alone, because I want us to be really free. I want us to be free in our spirit and free in just our daily lives, every ordinary day. I try to do what I do in my community because I want us to have that sovereignty and self-determination that our forefathers and mothers fought so hard and sacrificed so much so that we could have. And not just in our archipelago, but anywhere in the world we Filipinos are, including here in the US.
And speaking of that, Filipinos in America, what can we do to help our home country?
You can help our home country by fighting very similar fights we are fighting in the Philippines for a more real democracy, something literally that can be eaten because it brings a better quality of life to people. You can share with us your own struggles and lessons about democracy, participation, representation, leadership here in the United States. You can share with us your best practices and models about a progressive economy that benefits everyone and not just a few. You can share with us how you sustain and reinterpret being Filipino here in the US, because those are also pearls of wisdom for us as Filipinos in the Philippines. So this exchange gift can go on for the rest of our lives.
And it's good because learning from each other, right? Learning from different perspectives. And one last question. Filipinos here are very proud. You know, oh, this is Filipino. We wear our culture, right?
Yes, literally.
But despite all the problems, all the issues in the Philippines, despite the seemingly insurmountable corruption problems, you know, we sometimes question, are we going to ever see that in our lifetime? Are my children, are our children going to ever see that in their lifetime? There's still so many things to be proud of as Filipinos. What are those for you?
I'm really so proud of having been born Filipino. I think it's not an accident. God really made us be born Filipinos, whether we remain in the Philippines or we're elsewhere in the world. And I think it's to, as Rizal and Bonifacio and all of our heroes and lolas did before, it's to love Inang Bayan, to dedicate ourselves to her, to serve her. Coming from that heritage and coming from that tradition, I'm most proud that we've fought for so much, we've won so much already, and even the defeats that we had to swallow, they inspire us to just keep at it, to think of all of us Filipinos down through history, just in a long relay race. We appreciate what our lolos and lolas handed down to us, something better so that we could continue in the present time. And we know that we may see some of our efforts bear fruit in our lifetime, but we also have faith that even those things we won't live to see anymore, because we are keeping at it also, like those who came before us. We will be able to hand something better over to our children. And they for sure, sometime in the future, will realize the Philippines we've all been dreaming about since forever.
I wanted to end on that note, but I can't resist the urge to ask one more question. With that said, what can the people, Philams or Filipinos everywhere in the world, Filipinos in the Philippines certainly, expect from the opposition?
Oh, you can expect a lot. We've been preparing since the last 2 years, right after the 2022 elections, to now elect more opposition senators in the midterms next year, and then to keep on preparing and keep on strengthening the opposition to contest again in 2028. So we'll continue organizing on the ground. We'll continue upping our communications game in traditional media and also in social media, building and rebuilding community even online. Of course, we'll be mobilizing resources among us Filipinos still in the coming years. And when we fight in 2028 and when we win in 2028, we intend and Filipinos can expect that we'll do our best job to govern, to lead, to serve, in order for the Philippines to continue becoming even better in the future.
And I will end on that note. I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you
Jannelle.
for the hope that you're giving. Just the passion, whether opposition or not, just the passion to serve the people and the passion to do right by the Filipino people. Maraming salamat and mabuhay ka.
Salamat, mabuhay ang sambayanan.
Thank you so much. I hope that brought inspiration to you. My name is Jannelle So, and this has been So Jannelle.
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Ay, grabe.
When did-
Galing mo talaga mag-host. Kagabi ako ngayon. No, hindi ako bolera. When I don't have anything good to say, I don't say anything. So,
Thank you. Thank you.